This is Jabari Walker, and you're listening to The Briefcase with Casey Holdahl.
Greetings, Blazer fans, and welcome to The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. Episode 144 of The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. It is actually going to be brief this time. I am Casey Holdahl. Trailblazers getting a huge win Wednesday night versus the Memphis Grizzlies. A great win on its own, but an important win for the Trailblazers because it puts them within shouting distance of getting into the 10th seed, which is the last spot in the play-in race. Blazers now very close to getting into that play-in. Still have to get over the Suns and the Mavericks, who are now tied, but the Trailblazers made up some ground by getting that win on Wednesday. As we talked about on the last edition of The Briefcase, Blazers have to start winning some games above them versus teams in the standings in order to get into that play-in conversation. They did that Wednesday night, thanks in large part to the play of Deni Avdija, who we'll talk about a bit as well on this edition. Nuggets, Cavs, and Celtics up next for the Trailblazers. Not in that order because I screwed it up, but we'll talk about those games coming up as well on this edition of The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. Well, after losing 5 in a row, the Trailblazers have now won 3 straight by beating the Memphis Grizzlies on Wednesday, 115-99 at Moda Center, Wednesday night in front of 19,491 fans. And a game, again, that, the Blazers hadn't had a win versus the team with the winning record since beating the Kings. They're actually going to be playing in here in Sacramento here before too awful long, about a week from now. Back in I think like February 3rd or first week of February, basically. Last time the Blazers won a game versus a team with a winning record. They did do that Wednesday night versus a 43-27 Grizzlies team. Granted, they were missing Ja Morant, but still a very good Grizzlies team. The Trailblazers didn't just win that game. I mean, they soundly beat the Grizzlies on Wednesday night. Huge night from Deni Avdija, who was just playing out of his mind as of late. Missed a game or two with I think that quad injury that he injured in the game versus the Wizards in Washington. Ever since he's come back has been absolutely ridiculous. Had 26 points in the first half, finished with 31 points, really set the Blazers on a path to getting that win. Blazers go up by as many as 21 points in the first half, hold off a second half rally from the Grizzlies. I think they got it down to as low as 6, I believe, late in the third quarter. Trailblazers able to push it back up and end up riding that game out. A rare blowout victory for the Trailblazers, able to get some of the bench guys the last 2 minutes of the game, something they haven't been able to do as of late. Again, versus a very good Grizzlies team. I mean, they soundly beat the Wizards. They didn't look their best against the Raptors, and they still got that win for a number of different reasons. And so you go into the game on Wednesday night versus the Grizzlies, a much better team than the Raptors or the Wizards, even without Ja Morant. And you're thinking to yourself, at least I'm thinking to myself, if they play the way that they've played in the last couple of games, it's going to be hard to get this win. And then you have Deni go out and just have a phenomenal first half. Anthony Simons also having a great game as well. You really, and Duop Reath, another guy too. You got to mention Duop. I think I mentioned on the last edition that, with both Robert Williams and DeAndre Ayton and now Jabari Walker out with a concussion, basically Donovan Clingan and Duop Reath at that center position. And Duop, after not playing a whole lot this season, has really kind of been thrust into action these last couple weeks and has done a fantastic job of it. The Blazers, Duop, a very important part of Portland getting that win versus the Grizzlies. So the Blazers now just 2 games back from both of these Mavericks and the Suns in the race for the final spot in the play-in, the 10th seed. The Mavericks lost on Wednesday. The Suns won on Wednesday. So both the Blazers and the Suns gain a full game on the Mavericks. That gets the Suns into a tie with the Mavericks for 10th, and that gets the Blazers just within 2 games of the Mavericks. Again, as we talked about over and over and over again, there's a case to be made for each one of these teams. The Blazers, I think, probably have like the medium schedule and seem like they're playing the most consistent basketball, even if it's not maybe at the same level of the highs that the Suns are at when they're playing their best, though they don't play their best very often, it seems. The Suns, who has the most talent, but as I mentioned, the hardest schedule of the 3 teams trying to get into that 10th seed, and also just a team that just hasn't really put it together this year. Now, that does feel like one of those teams that, while maybe they kind of haven't had the season they wanted, that once you kind of get to your back against the wall, like the Suns around now, I think that's one of those instances where they'll probably play maybe some of their best basketball, knowing that like none of those guys wants to miss the postseason. I mean, even getting the play-in, I think for a team with that much talent is it's definitely a disappointment. But you figure a team that has Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal is going to figure it out eventually and doesn't want to get embarrassed by missing the postseason. So maybe they get that thing figured out. And then you have the Mavs, who have the easiest schedule, but are obviously facing all kinds of injury issues. Still TBD whether or not Anthony Davis is going to be able to come back. The other thing too is that like if they fall below the play-in at that point in time, do you even bother bringing Anthony Davis back? And I think there's probably some competing interests with the Mavs right now that maybe don't have especially a whole lot to do with the playoffs or whatever, and maybe more of a public relations kind of thing. But either way, a easier schedule than both the Blazers and the Suns, but just really having a hard time with injuries. So we'll kind of see how that shakes out. But the Blazers, by getting that game on Wednesday night versus the Grizzlies, put themselves in a position to start to make a move. And if they don't win that game, it's basically just a missed opportunity because you have the Mavs lose and you'd rather the Suns had lost that game, but you figure if they're going to be playing some tough teams, you might have a chance to maybe make up a little bit of ground. Blazers playing some pretty tough teams here too coming up. At least it's at home though. And so if they hadn't gotten that game on Wednesday, it wouldn't have ended their chances of making the play in, but I think you feel a lot worse about those chances than you do on Thursday. So, you really got to give the Blazers credit. You got to give Chauncey Billups credit for getting this team ready to go. You got to give Deni a lot of credit. And, I think you got to give Ants a bunch as well. Tumani had a nice game. So, everyone doing their part to get that one. And again, a game where I think, back in November, maybe even back in January, the Blazers get up 21 in that game, and then, the Grizzlies make a run. And that feels like one of those games where a month ago, 2 months ago, the Grizzlies end up overtaking Portland and winning that game. Wasn't the case this time, which was great to see. Great to reward your home fans too with a really fun, nice win versus a very good Grizzlies team, and giving themselves a chance to extend their season by getting into that conversation for the play-in. Again, the games they have coming up, they got the Nuggets on Friday, the Celtics on Sunday, and then I believe the Cavs on Tuesday before heading out for that 5-game road trip that starts in Sacramento. So you really feel like you probably got to get at least one more of those. The Nuggets haven't been playing especially well lately. They haven't had Nikola Jokic in the last couple of games. Jamal Murray set out the last game as well. If that's the case, you feel really good about your chances on that one. Even without that, the Blazers have done a decent job versus the Nuggets this year. Any of those games are going to be incredibly difficult. That's the main takeaway. But you kind of feel like you almost need to get another one of these before the end of this homestand in order to feel really good about your chances going on in that road trip in order to get a chance in the play-in. Celtics, did a number on you. I mean, you kept it kind of close, but, they didn't play with a number of their important players and had, a couple guys just a couple guys do really well shooting threes in that game. No reason to even jinx it, but and then you got a Cavs team that it looks like they're struggling a little bit right now. And a Cavs team the Blazers almost beat, granted without Donovan Mitchell, but they had to take that game to overtime in Cleveland in order to beat the Blazers. So some reasons to feel like we got a shot in some of these games if you're the Trailblazers. And again, if you really want to give yourselves a chance to get into that play-in race, you probably got to get at least one more of these games on the homestand. A couple would be great, but I think you probably just got to get one of these next three in order to continue to give yourself a chance to stay in pace for that 10th seed. Let's run down some of the stats from the win versus the Grizzlies on Wednesday. 31st win of the season for the Portland Trail Blazers. 31 points on 9 and 18 shooting from the field, 5 of 8 from 3, 8 of 9 from the field, 16 rebounds, 8 assists, 2 blocks for Deni Avdija. And just to run down some of the historical parts of Deni's play, which, again, he has been absolutely phenomenal lately. It is the 4th 30-plus game of the season for Deni Avdija, 6th of his career. So Deni had only had 2 30-plus point games coming into this season. He's now had 6 for his career, 4 this season. His high was 34 this year, March 10th at Golden State. Deni is just a second Trailblazer in history with multiple games in a season of 30-plus points, 15-plus rebounds, and 5-plus assists. Sidney Wicks did it twice. Deni Avdija, the only other player to do it in franchise history. And Deni is the only player with 31 plus points, 16 plus rebounds, 8 plus assists, and 5 plus made three-pointers this season. Other than LeBron James, who did it back in February, no Trailblazer had ever put up that stat line before. So once again, Deni doing some things that we have not seen. And again, on a great run as of late as well. Deni in his last 8 games is averaging 22.1 points on 50% shooting from the field, 48% shooting from 3, 83% shooting from the line, 10.4 rebounds, 5.4 assists in 34.9 minutes. So Deni in his last game's averaging a double-double on 50% shooting from the field and 48% shooting from three. That is phenomenal business. Deni Avdija. I mean, I don't know if you can make a case for most improved player for Deni. Um, maybe most, I mean, there's not a most surprising player or a like, boy, this guy's a lot better than I thought he was player. But Deni Avdija is really doing some things this season. And again, just we had chalk talk before the game on Wednesday with some folks who run some Blazer websites and some Blazer accounts. Shout out to all you guys who were. It was great to see you all. And just the front office talking about kind of what they've gotten out of Denny is it's that trade has really worked out for the Trailblazers, and that's not to say that it hasn't worked out for the Wizards too. That's one of those trades that I think both teams feel good about. But I think the way that Denny is playing as of late, the structure of his contract, kind of his personality, the leadership role that he's taking on, all those things really make that move just a it's really paying off well. 22 points for Anthony Simons on 8 of 24 shooting from the field, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and a steal in 36 minutes. 17 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, and a steal in 30 minutes for Shaedon Sharpe. Shaedon, another guy too, who, just not doing anything crazy, just kind of sticking to it is what he's supposed to be doing, playing some pretty good defense, not forcing things on either side of the ball, and is just kind of playing a very kind of solid game right now. And I think you're getting solid production out of Shaedon. I think you have to feel really good about kind of what we've seen out of Shaedon here as of late. 15 points on 6 of 11 shooting from the field, 3 of 5 shooting from three, 2 rebounds, 3 assists for Toumani Camara. A low rebounding game for Toumani, but Donovan Clingan did get 11 rebounds in that game. Donovan Clingan also winning the battle versus his old nemesis Zach Edey in that game. Both players getting the start. Donovan Mitchell gets 7 points, 11 rebounds, 3 blocks, also 5 fouls. Zach Edey 6 points, 3 rebounds, 3 rebounds, 5 steals, or excuse me, 5 fouls. He was in foul trouble the entire game, only played 11 minutes. Ended up going a minus 19 in those 11 minutes, while Donovan Clingan went a plus 21 in 26 minutes. So nice game, Donovan. You won another battle versus old Zach Edey, just like you did at the NCAA tournament. Which shout out to all of you folks whose brackets are doing well. I did one bracket this year, one for men's, one's for women's, and I promptly forgot all the picks that I made. So maybe I'll win, but I severely doubt it because I watched exactly zero college basketball this year. Though, in my experience, watching college basketball doesn't do a whole lot to improve my bracket. So, who's to say how that's going to play out? And as I mentioned, Duop Reath, 13 points, 9 rebounds, 6 of those on the offensive glass for WAP. That's incredibly important. Those are second chance opportunities in 19 minutes. Again, a guy like WAP, you just put him out there. He doesn't complain. He's not in his feelings about not having played a whole lot, goes out there and really gives you something you need. So, I think again, you feel really good about that win. You feel really good about kind of where they're at in that race now for the play-in. Are they going to get there? It's going to be tough. It was always going to be tough. But I think, if you had told people at the beginning of the season, Blazers are going to be fighting for a play-in late, the Blazers are going to have 31 wins. Obviously, if you told that to Vegas, they wouldn't have believed you because they had Blazers pegged at, I think, 22 wins this season. So for the Blazers to be where they're at now compared to where a lot of us thought they were going to be out, really good thing for the team. If you're someone who's more interested in lottery odds, which no shade, like I completely understand where you're coming from. Maybe you're not feeling as good about this, or you're not as happy about kind of where they're at. But I think too, like we've talked about it a fair amount. They're actually human beings on the team. They want to play, they want to win, they want to have success, and they're playing some pretty good basketball right now. Like if they were again, if they were kind of just getting by because of all kinds of different extraneous factors, which there are some of those. Don't get me wrong. Like there, some of what the Blazers have been able to do as of late has been just as much about their opponent as it's been about them. But they have at least worked themselves into a situation where they're consistent enough to where they're having an opportunity to be in that fight for a play-in spot. Versus again teams that I think everyone just assumed were gonna not assumed. I assume that most people thought the Mavs were probably going to be the top seed or one of the top seeds in the West after making to the finals last year. Obviously, they decided to go a different direction. I think you probably assumed that people thought the Suns' second year of that experiment was probably going to be better than the first. It seems like it's It's not really all that much different, about the same. And then you got the Blazers, a team that, I think everyone assumed would be tanking hard this year, who are actually going out trying to win some games and have done a decent job of doing that. So, if you're someone whose interest is, getting the highest draft pick, maybe this season hasn't been for you. But if you're someone who just likes to watch some good basketball and see the team improve, I think you probably feel decent to good about where this team is at right now this season. Well, as I mentioned, the NCAA tournament is upon us, and you probably all have your brackets. And maybe you want to place some bets too, but you can't do that through the Oregon Lottery app. No college betting on the app, but you can do that at casinos in Oregon, including Spirit Mountain Casino, that has a variety of rooms from lavish premium suites to charming classic standards. The hotel at Spirit Mountain Casino has a type of room for everybody. Their rooms have all the essentials from high-speed Wi-Fi to 24-hour front desk service. Choose the room that best suits you and book your stay now. You got spring break coming up. Take your kids to the coast for a couple days, do some gaming, some entertainment at Grand Ron, make the quick drive out to the coast, to Lincoln City, to Tillamook, to Newport from there. It's always a great time. As I mentioned, you want to sit down, hunker down in front of a TV and get some bets in on the NCAA tournament, which you can do at Spirit Mountain Casino. Not a bad way to spend some of that tournament time as well. I love a casino. I think Spirit Mountain's great. You should check them out. Spirit Mountain Casino on Highway 18 in Grand Ronde. Elevate your game. All right, real quick before we wrap up this edition of the Briefcase presented by Spirit Mountain Casino, just wanted to run down, as I mentioned, the last 3 games of Portland's homestand, what the teams have done that they're playing as of late. So you got the Nuggets on Friday, 7 o'clock start time. Nuggets have lost 2 of their last 3, and they've actually alternated wins and losses for the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games, though they did lose their last game, a 120-108 loss to the Lakers on Wednesday in Los Angeles. So if you're going to go back and forth, then that means they win the game on versus Portland on Friday. I think that really depends, though, on the status. As I mentioned, Nikola Jokic has not played in their last 2 games. Not sure if they're trying to get him rest before the playoffs. Not sure if he's actually dealing with something. I believe Jamal Murray set out the game versus the Lakers as well. If they don't go, obviously Portland's chances improve, I think, fairly considerably. Granted, the Blazers have seemed to play better against teams that have more of their full complement of players. But I think at this point in time, I think they know what the stakes are. Like the players have talked about the play-in. Chauncey will acknowledge it. He won't really talk about it. He says he doesn't talk to the players about it. The players have said as much. But the players are thinking about it. So, that has been a motivating factor for them. And every single guy I've talked to where I've asked kind of, what are you kind of hoping to get done in this last month of the season? Everyone talks about the play-in. So Friday's game, another big opportunity for the Trailblazers, particularly, again, if Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray don't play. The injury report for that one gets released in a couple hours. I was hoping it would maybe come out before I was finished with the show, but that does not seem to be the case. But we'll know on Friday. Actually, we'll know here on Thursday afternoon whether or not, or at least I guess we won't know for sure necessarily, but if they're out, we'll know for sure. If they're not out, maybe they play, maybe they don't. We'll have to see. But either way, that game for the Trailblazers is an important one, particularly, again, if Nikola Jokic doesn't play. And what I mean by that, too, is just the Blazers have to basically, at this point in time, they have such little margin for error that whatever move they make, they basically have to take advantage of every single opportunity they have right now. Like they can't lose games to the Grizzlies when they're without John Morant. And if you want to make the play-in, you can't lose to the Nuggets without Nikola Jokic, and especially if it's without Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray has played incredibly well versus the Trailblazers this season. Part of me feels like it's because of that Toumani Camara piece that Jason wrote, and him bristling at the notion that Toumani was the reason why he didn't have a good game, goes out and puts up 50 plus, I believe, the last time they played the Trailblazers. So hopefully he's let that go, but if not, hopefully he sits out because, as I mentioned, he has been pretty good versus Trailblazers, and they definitely need to get that win. Then you have the Celtics on Sunday, 3 o'clock start time for that one. That is the second game of a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 game road trip for the Celtics, who have lost 1 game in their last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and that was to Oklahoma City, team with the best record in the NBA, or second best record in the NBA. So that one's going to be tough. As I mentioned, 3 o'clock start time in that game. Porzingis looks like he is back. Jason Tatum playing well. That's going to be a tough one for the Trailblazers to get. And, you also have Peyton Pritchard making his return to his ancestral home here in Portland, Oregon, West Linn kid. So that one feels like a pretty tough one for the Blazers. Have had quite a bit of a difficult time with the Celtics throughout the years, anyways. So that's going to be that's a toughie. The Blazers get that game. Then I think you really start to feel good about their chance. Heck, if they beat the Celtics, you just feel good because they beat a very good team. That one's going to be tough though. So we'll see about that one on Sunday. As I mentioned, 3 o'clock start time is that one. Another afternoon matinee for the Trailblazers. And then finally, finishing up this homestand versus the Cavaliers on Tuesday, 7 o'clock start time for that one. And the Cavaliers have lost their last three. They had won, boy, what was it, like 13 or 14 in a row, and have since lost their last three. And that will happen sometimes. Like when a team goes on a run where they win a bunch of games, like sometimes it's almost like you forget how to lose. And then when you do lose, you kind of forget how to win. Or like you start to press so much because you're so accustomed to winning that you start to kind of play outside of yourself. You get away from the things that are giving you success before, you're having success with before. I feel like that kind of happens when you have those long winning streaks, when you win as many games as they won. And the Trailblazers, during that stretch for them, gave them one of their tougher games they had. Blazers losing to the Cavaliers in Cleveland on March 2nd, 133-129 in overtime, in a game where the Blazers do a couple things better, particularly late in the game. If they're able to rotate out to Max Strus in the corner a bit quicker than they did, they might end up winning that game, and that winning streak becomes less of a winning streak. That was also the Cavaliers' 50th win of the season. So a chance for the Trailblazers in that one. As I mentioned, they just lost to the Magic 108-103 on Sunday, lost to the Clippers 132-119 on Tuesday, and then followed that up with another loss to the Sacramento Kings 123-119 on Wednesday. So they'll have Thursday off after playing a back-to-back already in Portland, I would assume at this point in time. Or, excuse me, they'll play Friday versus the Suns, 7 o'clock start time in that one. And then they play the Jazz on Sunday at a 12:30 start. And then they play the Blazers to wrap up that road trip, 7 o'clock on Tuesday. The fact that is also the end of a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 game road trip for the Cavaliers, that's a good thing for the Trailblazers. Last game of a road trip. It's oftentimes, even when you lose, you're going home. So if the game gets to a point where it feels like it's slipping away, a lot of times teams just, when you're at the end of a long trip, you're tired, you're going to get to sleep in your own bed that night. Sometimes you just kind of let that one slip away. It's a long season, so that's kind of stuff that happens. I'm not saying that's going to happen. The Cavaliers are a very good team. They have only lost 13 games this season, so betting on the Cavaliers to ever lose is a bad bet. But I do feel like that is a game where, again, they play 3 more games before facing the Blazers on Tuesday in the last game of a long road trip. Blazers almost beat them in Cleveland. Granted, again, Donovan Mitchell didn't play in that game. I imagine he probably is going to play this time, though maybe they look to get him some rest as well. They were able to do it last time they got away with it. I'm not entirely sure what the Cavaliers are paying for at this point. I don't know if, actually, let me pull up the standings real fast here. I shouldn't throw out things that I can easily get the answer for, even though we're doing this live. So the Cavaliers they're 6 games up on the Celtics. So you kind of assume that they have the East mostly squared away. They are right there with the Thunder, though, for the best record in the NBA. As of right now, they are like a half game behind the Oklahoma City Thunder. So they have that to play for. But at least in turn, and the Celtics, I guess conceivably with 6 games to play, I'm guessing they probably have like 12 or 13 games left. 6 games back, I should say, or the Cavaliers are 6 games up on the Boston Celtics. So it's conceivable that the Celtics could catch the Cavaliers. It seems pretty unlikely, though, with as many games left to go as there are, which are not that many. So that's an interesting game, too, for the Trailblazers. So if they're able to get one of those versus the Nuggets, versus the Celtics, or versus the Cavs, again, I think you feel really good about their chances of perhaps jumping into that final play-in spot. If they don't get any one of those games, it's it's not out of the realm of possibility at that point. But again, you gotta start to string together some wins, and this trip versus some very good teams, or not this trip, the end of this homestand versus some very difficult teams. Not the best situation to be in. You would have hoped you could have gotten some of those games that you tricked away early on in the season, but that's just how it goes. So now you got to win some of the tougher games here later in the season. We will see if the Trailblazers are able to do that. As I mentioned, Friday versus the Nuggets, Sunday versus the Celtics, Tuesday versus the Cavs, before heading out to face the Kings in the first game of a 5-game road homestand. The first game of a 5-game road trip. It's been a long season, folks. On Thursday, a week from now. And that's going to do it for this edition of The Briefcase. Thanks so much for joining me. As always, we'll talk again later next week. And we'll have, again, maybe a better sense of where the Trailblazers are at in terms of the play-in spot. If they're able to get some wins here before I talk to you next, I think maybe you can start to maybe get excited about it. You can be excited about it now, actually, but I think that excitement could be especially warranted if they're able to get 1 or even 2 of these games before the end of this homestand. If not, they really put themselves in a tough spot going on to that road trip. So until then, thanks so much for joining me. Thank you, Spirit Mountain Casino. As always, I'm Casey Holdahl. We will talk soon. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Go Blazers.